Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini episode, I have a couple of articles detailing with outer space. One, how basically the moon landing, there was a letter written by Nixon to deal with the disaster that the Apollo moon landing could have become, and I have another article once again dealing with Canadian UFO, sightings. So let's get into the first article, Apollo in the event of disaster. Here exactly what would happen if the Apollo moon landings failed. Numerous allegations and claims have been made about the famous 1969 flight to the moon of NASA's Apollo 11. They include that the astronauts saw UFOs on the way to the moon, that alien spacecraft were seen and filmed on the surface of the moon, and that the whole event was nothing but a well-orchestrated hoax, and that the conspiratorial list goes on. But there's yet another issue that directly concerns the moon landings, and that was quietly planned for way back in 1969. This one, however, is very different to all of the above matters, but is certainly no less intriguing. There is one particular aspect of the Apollo missions to the moon that was shrouded in deep secrecy for decades. It is an aspect of the project that offers much support for the notion that astronauts really did set foot on the surface of the moon, which I personally do believe occurred, although the Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins flight proved to be a spectacular and historic success. Behind the scenes, both NASA and the White House knew that this never-before-attempted mission was an extremely dicey one. There was a very real possibility that it could all have ended in awful tragedy, with Armstrong and Aldrin left stranded on the surface of the moon and faced with an inevitable and rapid death, while Collins, orbiting above the lunar surface, would have been forced to make the terrible decision to leave his friends and comrades behind and head back to the safety of the Earth utterly alone. As a result, and in the event that the fate of Armstrong and Aldrin might very well have been forever and cruelly sealed far away from home, a brief speech was secretly and quietly drawn up for then-President Richard M. Nixon should he be forced to reveal to the world and the media that the very worst-case scenario really had tragically come to pass. A July 18, 1969 document sent from Nixon's aide William Safire to Nixon's White House Chief of Staff H.R. Bob Haldeman reveals the text of this speech. Given the title of an event of moon disaster, it begins thus: Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, knew that there is no hope for the recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice. These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most noble goal, the search for truth and understanding. The document continued. They will be mourned by their families and friends. They will be mourned by the people of the world. They will be mourned by a Mother Earth that dared send two of her sons into the unknown in their exploration. They steered the people of the world to feel as one in their sacrifice. They bind more tightly the brotherhood of man. In ancient days, men looked at stars and saw their heroes in the constellations. Its final words, in modern times we do much the same, but our heroes are epic men of flesh and blood. Others will follow and surely find their way home. Man's search will not be denied, but these men were the first, and they will remain the foremost in our hearts. For every human being who looks up at the moon in the nights to come will know that there is some corner of the world that is forever mankind. Thankfully, the speech was never needed during the course of any of the Apollo missions, and the secret documents languished in near obscurity, all but forgotten for decades. Yeah, but is that really true or not, folks? Some people have speculated for decades now that the moon landings were faked. And to do so, they would have to basically make fake speeches like this to basically say that the government covered all its bases to make the Apollo moon landings look as real as possible. Because, people do plan for disasters, folks. So even if the moon landings were faked, they would probably make fake documents for fake speeches to basically explain to the families of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin that they failed, like this. And this speech would basically be, as I said, would be made in preparation for it. Even if it were fake or real, folks. You would plan for disaster. But is that true or not? Maybe. But I do believe that the Apollo moon landings are real, folks. But that's only because I would like to basically believe they're real. That's the thing, folks. We need physical proof to prove that. I know some people have said they've seen that the remains of the moon landings are still on the moon through a telescope, but then again, that doesn't really prove anything, folks. Why? Because some people have said that they're fake. So we need real proof that once and for all prove this matter of the moon landings, folks, because it's kind of getting annoying. Either way, let's move on to the next article. Scientists call for better UFO data collection in Canada. Indeed, folks, once again, we basically go back to Canada, and this time the people there, the experts, they want better data collection on UFOs that people are seeing up there. So let's read on and find out exactly, well, what they're finding up there. Canada needs a transparent public agency to manage reports of unexplained objects in the sky, according to a new report commissioned by the country's top scientist. The Sky Canada's project report calls for a federal framework to replace the current patchwork of protocols that hinders scientific investigation. There is some evidence that there's something really unusual going on in the skies. We just don't have enough information, said Chris Rotutsky, director of the Canadian UFO Survey, who contributed to the report. Okay, folks, a better framework for gathering information and data on UFOs, and, well, that is good, folks. We need that. Now, them basically making a commission, well, I have to ask, who's going to oversee this sort of commission, or basically a program to oversee collecting this data? I have my doubts about it, folks, because I fear this data collection agency, or this, well, commission, as I put it, folks, are actually going to hide all information dealing with UFOs, because I fear that maybe they're basically just working for the government just to hide it and stuff like that. But that's just my fear, folks. We can basically talk about that later on, so let's continue with this article. Launched in 2022 by Canada's Chief Science Advisor, Mona Niemer, the project examined challenges by collecting data on UAP unidentified anomalous phenomena and compared international approaches. The report found Canada's fragmented reporting system complicates the application of science principles, making it erroneous, if not impossible, for researchers to access and compile data. Canada once had a centralized UAP office under the National Research Council, which operated from 1967 to 1995. After its closure, responsibilities were divided among agencies like the Canadian Space Agency and Transport Canada. Rotutsky's Canadian UFO Survey, logging about 25,000 reports over 35 years, became a key resource. It sounds pretty good, folks, but apparently some people don't think it's enough. This is why some people are proposing a better agency, but let's continue with this article. While most UAP sightings turn out to be planes, drones, or natural phenomena, some remain unexplained. Nonetheless, some UAP sightings for which data exists remain unexplained even after investigation, the report states. There is some interesting stuff being reported, said Rotutsky. It doesn't necessarily prove that aliens are visiting us. It proves that some unusual cases are baffling. Well, that is indeed the truth, folks. So no matter what you do when you investigate UFOs, sometimes they're so baffling, well, that you just can't make heads or tails out of them. That's most of the time when basically dealing with the really odd cases here, folks. I mean, if you look at all the stories we've read through, folks, yeah, some of them really leave you perplexed. But we'll talk a little more about this after we finish off the article. The report suggests the Canadian Space Agency could lead UAP data management through Sagar proposed universities as an alternative. Harvard's Galileo project, led by astrophysicist Avi Loeb, was cited as a model for scientific UAP analysis. Loeb's team uses sensors and AI to study UAP, which could aid national security. The software we developed can be used by the Department of Defense if these are human-made objects, said Loeb. This subject touches upon national security for Canada and the U.S., and I think cooperation would be very much appreciated. Rotutsky welcomed the report's push. Things are looking up, and there's no question that the truth is out there, he said. Unfortunately, we're stuck down here. Indeed, folks. Because we're stuck down here, we can only basically do so much, and that's the real problem here. To gather real data, we need basically cooperation. We need to develop better technology for basically scanning the skies and basically, well, evaluating the information that we gather, and we need a real effort by all those involved and others who we need to involve to basically get to the real truth. And that, folks, is just the truth of the matter. Until we can actually come to some sort of consensus on the data and find the real way to evaluate and find out what is really going on, we can only basically continue to have claims made and theorize about the actual happenings that people are basically experiencing when they basically encounter these UFOs in the sky, either through basically close encounters, sometimes even physical close encounters with creatures coming out of these vehicles, folks, and people just seeing, well, these things and lights in the sky. And that's the truth. Either way, folks, we're at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics, they're bad for you. You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions or the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Hit the part of the bell that will give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Till next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.